All right, so welcome to an extra special episode of the Fitfall podcast. So we are here at Zwift headquarters in California, and we have Eric Min, the current CEO of Zwift, with us.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this chat.
Yeah, thanks for making the trip.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you can see behind us, so we have the new Zwift Ride as well as the Zwift Tron Bike. So as you know by now, the Zwift Ride has come out, and we're here to talk to him about this as well as kind of like the origins of Zwift and anything else that we can probably talk about too.
Yeah, we'll dive into all these things here and kind of a little bit of history between these two things, and of course the history of Zwift itself.
So yeah, I think that's probably a great place to start. So like, what's the origin story of Zwift? Like, you know, the idea, how did it come about?
Yeah, so we've been around for 10 years. I can't believe how fast it's gone by. But it all started when I was living in London. And, you know, I'm from New York. I lived in Central Park. I had a community there. I raced, I trained. It was my community for everything that I was passionate about, which was cycling. So when I moved to London, I lost all of that. And so of course, in London, you know what it's like. It's very difficult to get out. The weather doesn't cooperate. And so I started riding indoors a lot more than I normally do, which as a cyclist, you always do in the wintertime. And so I started to acquire all the different apps and videos, anything to just keep me engaged so I could ride an hour a day. And I think, you know, what I realized was just I was missing the social aspect. I was missing the competition, and you need other real people to do that. And so the idea was born, well, you know, if I could just recreate this in some sort of virtual world, and it was 80% as good as like the outdoor experience, that would be way better than what exists today. And, you know, I looked at all the different apps that are out there, you know, and you know, we weren't the first virtual, you know, 3D video experience for cycling. There were others, but they were not focused around like, you know, community or focused around, you know, the sense of being there with other people. So that was, I think, the difference and the, you know, how we were thinking about the business before. So yeah, I mean, I was sort of exiting my last business, which has nothing to do with cycling, and thought, wow, this would be really fun. And I think the acid test was asking my partner, who is not a cyclist, about this idea. And I think what he said to me was, there's nothing, well, he would support any business that would encourage people to be more fit, to exercise, right? To get them into a habit of you know, daily fitness. And so we went off on a journey, and, you know, I'm not a video game developer. And so the first thing I did was Google, like, hey, I need a 3D you know, video game developer. And I came across John Mayfield, my third co-founder. And so we went on this journey of, like, you know, figuring out like the project that he's working on. And it didn't take long for us to pull together, well, there are 4 founders total, and pull this business together. I had made some money from my last business, both my partner and I. We thought, okay, let's just, you know, invest in this business and see where we go. And John was pivotal because he had a project that was probably a couple of years old, and we were able to get it off the ground pretty fast. So that was really the motivation, and how we got to, you know, forming Zwift pretty quickly, because we went from starting the business in January to launching in October, the closed beta.
So was the first version of Zwift really more about the cycling experience, or did it already have a lot of the social aspects built in?
So it's really, so we actually thought about doing running first, because we just thought about the market. You know, running is a much bigger market. But in the end, cycling was what we had expertise in, we were passionate about. And I think we made the right call, because the virtual experience of cycling with drafting and the pack dynamics and everything else that goes with cycling was better fit for what we were trying to build than running. Running was always going to follow afterwards. But in terms of the experience, the essence, I think the most important thing is knowing that there are other people on the platform, and with a reasonable amount of density. That's why we started with a 3-mile, you know, course on Jarvis Island, where there was no recording on Strava. So we were able to create our own route. And when I first landed on that, when John first built that, and I started riding around by myself, I said, this is not fun. Like, we could be in trouble. So we started coming up with ideas. Well, let's start adding jerseys. So we added Pacer, we added bots, right, to kind of fill up the world. But the first thing we did was added competition around the sprint, the fastest lap, the KOM. And then we opened the beta on top of that. And that was enough to get the community really excited about doing all sorts of things, including not only forming events of their own, they started to build like tools around our product that we didn't even have support for. That was really the moment, like, okay, we've got something here. Like I felt, and we were lucky that we had product market fit so early in our journey. I think many companies are not as lucky in that.
When you first approached John, how different was that product compared to when you launched in that October timeframe?
So if you know John is not an extrovert. He's an introvert. I'm more of an extrovert. So he had built this thing for himself, like, and he didn't want to, there was no intention of building it so that he could ride with other people. And so I think we kind of met in the middle. I was so bullish. I'm like, people show up because other people are there. And so his focus is really around building, the training tool. And I was really focused on like making sure that, people wanted to be there and build a community. And so we did both, right? We had the training, which was his, sort of the bread and butter of his project. And then we also, of course, the beautiful setting that he had with his game. And I was focused on like, let's create this social density and let the community, create things that I didn't even expect. Racing, for example, or, why would people want to do 100 miles around that 3-mile loop? This is what they were doing, or building tools, spreadsheet tools to just manage events. And we had dozens of websites that formed to educate others about what Zwift is and what it could be. It was quite exciting to see all that unfold.
What were some of the biggest technological challenges you had, like to grow Zwift, or any big roadblocks that you had along the way?
Well, the original game was a single player, so there was no concept of a network of other people. So one of my co-founders, Alaric Marine, he built the backend, the initial backend. So we made it a multiplayer user. So we made some design decisions early on. So what was really difficult to get right early on, it took us a few years, was trying to support the scale of the platform. So, people logging in at the same time or people riding at the same time. And it took us a long time to get that right. Now we have, we always build out we scaled our platform that is many times more than what we currently support, so that we'd never have these sleepless nights when, we find out that, for some reason, people can't log in anymore. So yeah, we went through that journey, and we're past that now. So that was probably the hardest thing, is just keeping the platform stable with the demand. And we were fortunate because we had made all that investment. So when COVID did hit, the whole system was able to, stay up. And that's that is the most important thing that we have to do for our community, is that you can always log in and you can always ride. And, our uptime is 99.8%. Like it's pretty high.
You did have a period, I think, around COVID where you mentioned, I think you had the old sweater analogy or something like that. You talked about having to get rid of some of that old debt from like a computer coding standpoint. Do you feel at this point that the Zwift app is beyond that old debt, and that you're basically now into kind of a newer version, newer platform of it from a behind the scenes perspective?
Yeah, I mean, look, any piece of software, any app that you build over time has technical debt, but doesn't mean you need to rewrite everything. But areas that you plan to spend a lot of time developing, you do need to, from time to time, rewrite it. I mean, you'd be shocked at how many times Facebook was rebuilt, right? So this is just an ongoing thing. And so we continue to make investments in areas where we know that we want to continue to evolve. But there's, some software that's 10 years old, it's working fine. There's no point in rewriting for the sake of rewriting it.
Is there still some old John code, original John code in there?
Sure, of course.
Little Easter eggs in the code.
His fingerprints are all over that.
This was the first line. Right?
Yeah.
But it's one thing to build a game for when you're the only developer. You can take all sorts of shortcuts. We've done that ourselves. John's done that as well. But when you try to build a platform where you want to have 50 developers writing code at the same time, that's a very different infrastructure that you need to have. And we're at that stage now.
So speaking of John, since he was such an instrumental person, obviously, in the beginning of the platform, what is his role these days as Zwift in terms of, I guess, just overall?
I mean, early on, he was both obviously a co-founder, a product leader, an engineering leader. Today, he's focused more on the product side. And of course, he can always go in and write the code. But we have he's part more of the product team than he is, and product design team than he is the engineering team. That's a different group led by a different person. But he has so much institutional knowledge of the product that he's just, incredible resource. So we have a lot of developers now, and we're able to do this without him having to be involved with every step of the way, which is what you want. You want a scalable development team.
Now, just a quick note that this podcast episode is sponsored by Precision Fuel and Hydration. I myself have been using Precision Fuel and Hydration for quite a while, along with my wife, for all of my training rides, including some indoor rides as well. But of course, more than just myself, my wife, it's also pro cycling teams. You saw the Tour de France, using them both the women's and the men's side, and of course a bunch of other pro teams as well. But probably the coolest part about Precision Fuel and Hydration is their athlete support crew behind the scenes. They allow you to call them, like literally have a conference call with them, their sports scientists, to figure out your race plan, and then of course from there figuring out what exactly you need to execute on that particular race plan. It's just super cool stuff and really useful, especially if you're doing an event that's outside your norm. In my case, I do a lot of triathlon, but I did a crazy big multi-day trek, a hike of sorts, and to be able to have a nutrition plan that fit that was really super useful. But if you don't like talking to people, they also have an entire online race planner that you can do, an intake planner, and helps you figure out that same sort of thing. Now, all of their products are Informed Sports certified, vegan, and all are 2-to-1 glucose, fructose, and contain no artificial ingredients. And as I always say, they are totally edible, so they actually taste pretty decent. You can find a link in the description to 15% off your first order with coupon code FITFILE, F-I-T-F-I-L-E. Thank you again to Precision Fuel and Hydration for supporting this episode.
Was there an inflection point with your original team where you guys thought, whoa, this is actually a thing, and you kind of had to throw all your eggs in the basket?
Well, I remember celebrating when we saw 100 people on our platform.
Yeah.
We were in New York City. Yeah. We were celebrating, wow, we have 100 people riding around together.
Mm-hmm.
But I think even before that, when we announced the closed beta, this was in September of 2014, when there are, I think, 25,000, 30,000 people who signed up. We thought, okay, we're onto something. It's not just me. There are other people who actually want this experience. So that was pretty early on. And again, this goes back to, I think we were lucky to have early product market fit.
It's so funny, when we rode about a month ago, we were talking about that Zwift is only 10 years old, but in my mind, I feel like it's 15 or 20 years old. And you said that you don't really feel like you've done enough at this point. So are there we'll talk about this here in a second, but where do you want it to go?
Well, I would say that we'd be in trouble if we run out of ideas, but the laundry list of things that we want to do goes out so far, which is great, because we have no shortage of what we want to build with Zwift that is today. And so where do we want to go? I think, we want to really lean into the community. I think there's a huge opportunity for us to allow every single Zwifter to create content. And what does that mean in Zwift, right? And because we want people to have these unique experiences that they can kind of author and then publish and share. I think that is sort of the direction that is exciting for us. We don't have those tools. We have some of those tools ourselves. We need to open that up to our customers.
Are there specific examples of things that you want to be able to open up to customers in that area?
Well, I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but I think just like events, right? We have control over events. We have more tools for event management than our community leaders do, and we are facilitating some of that. But I think ideally we can just make our tools really robust, and then just open it up to the community and let them create their events the way they want, and have more support for events. I think a lot of it has to do with that. Or, I just give you just a random idea, why do we have to be the only ones creating challenges? Let the community create challenges and promote them. So there's a lot more we can do where, we don't have to take the position like we're the only creative folks out there. The community is just rich with ideas that, we don't have.
Looking at the event side, during COVID, there was certainly a lot of interest in the kind of the broadcast side of that, right? And in broadcasting and watching those events. Do you see, it seems like some of that interest has waned over the last few years, and that, people they enjoy racing those events, but watching people race esports has been a bit of a challenge. Where do you see that on its kind of journey?
You mean just streaming in general?
Streaming in general from a more of a professional side. So the watching of professional athletes competing on Zwift, it certainly spiked during COVID.
Yeah.
Do you see it still finding its footing, or do you see a big future there?
I think we need to innovate a bit more on the content side, on the experience side. And, when we talk about the ride and the controllers, that I think is a potential big unlock in what the experience could be. And we do have community members streaming, the riding and events or just training. And we do stream the elite events, the elite competition. So Zwift Games, for example, was streamed, and we had a pretty, sizable audience who tuned in for that. But I think it's not until we really have more of a gamified experience that we're, tinkering with different ideas. And you need controllers for that. You need very responsive controllers, and this is why we invested in that, because I think that opens up experiences that we just haven't been able to deliver.
Now, the interactive smart bike trainer is probably one of the most important aspects to Zwift, other than maybe the game experience and the social aspect. So where do you see that playing a role, and how do you work with partners to basically enable Zwift features that work best for consumers?
So I don't think of ourselves as a hardware company. We're really a software-led company, but hardware is such an important part of the onboarding and the core experience. So we continue to work with all our partners, Wahoo, Tax, and Elite, and others. We're just building products that are kind of filling in the gaps where they haven't innovated. And so, does it mean that we have to always make the ride going forward? No, not necessarily. But I think the position that we're in, we have to lead in some of these areas. And, we did that first with the hub, and the hub was not just about, lowering the price of the product, but just making it super easy to get on board, and the hub one with a single cog was also meant to simplify, what cassette you need. It's crazy how complicated that is for most consumers. So yeah, we're just kind of filling in the gaps where we see no innovation happening.
So maybe starting to look at those hardware pieces behind us. Your development story for the Zwift Ride, of course, has taken a lot of twists and turns. So why don't we start with what this is and kind of your thinking behind this, and then how we'll eventually get to how it led to that over there.
So I'll give you a little bit of history. I was probably 5 years ago, I was going around to all our partners and said, you have to make a smart bike. Smart bike is the future. Like, you can't expect people to bring their bike inside on a trainer. And moreover, if they take their bike off the trainer, you don't know what you're going to see them next, right? And the market came out with trainers. So, the Wild Kicker bike is an awesome bike. It's also $4,000. You have the Watt bike was probably the first one to come in. And so it's great to see this innovation around smart bike. Stages had theirs as well. But I just felt that the price point was still a barrier for, to be more of a mass market, at scale product. So that was the real innovation around the impetus around wanting to build a bike. And so if we're going to build a bike, well, we're not going to build a bike just like everyone else. Let's think about how we can use the hardware to over time enhance the experience that we can offer. So this is why the controller is so important, right? And we started with this bike because, we wanted to build a brand-defining product, which was going to be more expensive. A lot of bells and whistles. I mean, we kind of, we went over the top, building our own, motor for the trainer. And after a couple of years of work, we made the tough decision to not move forward with the production of this, because in the end, it was still going to be too expensive.
How close were you to production?
We were months away from putting it into that next phase of, PVT. So we pulled the plug in. That took a few months of just should we do it? Should we not? And it was a tough decision, but it was a right call. But as soon as we canned this project, the next day we went to this, which is how do we bring down the price even further?
Exactly. So looking at, you mentioned bells and whistles a second ago. The wheels lit up on this, correct?
Yes.
Both front and back?
And with controls, right? So the game could control the lighting.
Yep. It's interesting to see the similarities there. You can see the handlebar is very similar to the end state handlebar on Zwift Ride. You mentioned price being a limiting factor here. With Zwift Ride being $12.99, correct? What was the target price for?
About $2,800.
Okay, so quite a bit more.
Which at the time was still innovative.
Sure.
Right?
Back then, yeah.
But we had the conversation and it was still going to be too expensive. We've done a lot of studies about the willingness to pay, et cetera, but it was still too expensive in the end. So the lighting also extended to the top two. So we had really thought through all of this, building our own motor. I mean, it's insane what we were trying to achieve with this bike.
It's impressive. From a control standpoint, is there things that you gained over on Zwift Ride between this?
Yeah, so the concept is very similar. So it is a two-part, right? The idea with the original bike, the Tron bike, was that you can eventually swap in any trainer. It was designed for that. Of course, we had our own, but you can, if you already had it, if you already invested in a trainer, you'd be able to drop in a Neo or a Kicker, right? That was the original plan. But if you wanted the whole bike, you can just buy it with our trainer. We would also sell the wheel separately if you wanted. What came over though was the same design principle of you can use it with any trainer, but we'll launch with one.
Yep.
And what we absolutely brought over was the controllers.
Right.
It's identical. I mean, the form factor is slightly different, but otherwise it's And we had more adjustable points. And we simplified that because those are expensive to have those, just adjusting points, 3 different points. You could even have the saddle pull out. You can have multiple saddles that can just slide in. It was a clever design. In the end, we just went with a simple Allen key.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing on Zwift Ride how quick and efficient that is. Was this going to be called Zwift Ride or something else?
It was going to be called Ride, yes. So the name, we took the name.
What were the biggest challenges with producing the ride? Was it a manufacturing? Was it just trying to keep the cost as low as possible? Was it maybe a struggle between, features and affordability?
It was all those things. So we had to keep the price down. So you're working with a budget. You want to make sure that the user experience is as simple as possible. You know how it is. It's very hard to make something simple, and we spent a lot of time just making it simple. The controllers on that bike was wired to the trainer, so it had no power. Whereas we took the design of the Play and similar battery, or the same battery, which lasts a long months. So we felt pretty comfortable of just going with the battery and not wiring. Again, that reduces the cost. But otherwise, yeah, we used, some basic metals, tubing, and then customized what we thought was appropriate around the bottom bracket and the rear triangle.
So from the time that you guys had to make the tough decision from the original ride to this, how long ago was that?
So it's 18 months.
18 months, that's it. Okay.
It was fast. The team has been working overdrive to get this ready.
So you mentioned a few minutes ago that, that this was focused on this trainer today. Where do you see the future of the Zwift Ride frame with other companies out there?
The bike is meant to be compatible with as many trainers as possible, and we've onboarded a number of manufacturers, partners who will adopt our Cog and Click program. So this will be the Zwift Ready program that we will be launching in the fall. But yeah, the expectation is that if you've already made an investment in your trainer, you'll be able to upgrade to the ride, which I think, hopefully, makes the product even more accessible to our community.
When you look at the handlebar design on Zwift Ride, there's the button is there versus, so for the controls, the shifting and things like that, is button-based versus, a actual click like a traditional bike. Can you talk me through kind of what your thought was on one versus the other?
I mean, I think the team went through this. We tried to have as few moving parts as possible. Mechanical parts do break eventually, right? And these are just buttons, and we felt pretty comfortable with the technology that we were using and the haptics that it was going to be sufficient and good enough, and I actually quite enjoy it. So it's no regrets on the mechanical versus the form factor that we have.
Are there any features that you really fought for that you didn't necessarily get with the ride, that maybe it was just one of those price decisions or engineering decisions or something along those lines?
I think we got everything covered. There was conversation around, should we have some sort of a riser? And again, this just adds to the cost and the complexity. And I think what we wanted to do is make something really simple, affordable, and for the mass market. And so you have to give up on those things. I think if you really want those features, and there are other products out there that you can purchase.
I know that you guys pretty much manufacture almost everything on here, right? Like yourselves. I mean, is that really to control quality, or is that to control cost?
That's a good question. So it's our design, soups and nuts. Of course, we have partners in Asia who are actually manufacturing this, and several different manufacturers building different parts. And a lot of it is to do with just having quality control, but also it's cost control as well.
In the case of the Zwift Ride, it does not include the 1 year of Zwift within that price. What's sort of the thinking behind that versus having that included in some of the other packages that you've had?
Yeah, I think that we want to make sure the headline number wasn't higher than it needed to be. That's really the thought that went into it. If you're excited about the bike, then I think the software is of course, invest in the software. So we want to keep that, the product, the hardware costs as low as possible.
When do you see just the frame being offered?
So that is currently the plan. We don't have a date yet, but expect the frame to come online when we're ready, but it's just a matter of time.
Would you expect that pricing to be essentially the difference in price between the kicker core and the frame, or?
I would think it's going to be pretty close. It's in that ballpark. It'd be a shame to force people to buy a whole new bike when effectively they have a trainer, right? So, and this is why the getting other partners on board with this program is so important, and why they're excited, because they want to be part of that story.
What is your target audience with the ride? So is it people that you're trying to attract new customers to Zwift, or is it existing customers or ride profiles?
I can tell you that this bike is, I'm an enthusiast. This bike rides great for me as an enthusiast. It's not a belt-based bike. It's a chain-based. It feels like a bike. It supports SRAM, Shimano, different style shifting. But also, it's just very easy to use. So if you're interested in cycling, this is a great first step. And we're seeing that in our own community today. Like, people are getting onto Zwift before actually buying a bike, which is great. So you need to have a very affordable, accessible piece of hardware to get onto Zwift, and that's what this represents. So it's both. It's for newbies, but it's also for enthusiasts like me. And I see no reason, there's no compromise there for the most competitive individuals.
What do you see as some of the biggest struggles in terms of growing the audience? Like, let's say, Peloton has a really large audience. Like, do you actually see yourself going after that market with the ride?
No, I don't think so. If you just look at how many people are, ride outdoors, it's millions of people around the world, right? We're getting this data from, whether it's Strava or from media outlets that are out there. So plenty of cyclists. I think what I'm finding and what we've learned over the years is they're just lazy. Like, they need something really simple. This is why Peloton has done such a good job. You just buy the thing and off you go. And, yes, Zwift doesn't come with a screen, which would add to the cost. But this is the closest thing to just buying Zwift.
Was that a consideration in either of these designs as to having a screen akin to a Peloton bike?
It was. We looked into it, but the pace at which the screens evolve, we wouldn't want to invest in that. So most people have their own screens. They probably update it every 2 or 3 years anyway. Apple TV, it's hard to beat Apple TV for $150. The experience on Zwift, I think, is amazing for $150 hardware.
Do you see using the Peloton screen example, Peloton started to kind of move towards partnering with more hardware manufacturers to put their game, platform in those basically bikes that have screens in gyms and things like that. Do you guys see that as a next step as well?
I think there's talk of some gym hardware manufacturers, equipment manufacturers bringing out more powerful screens, and then that kind of opens it up. It always comes down to, is that a big enough opportunity versus, everything else that we want to do.
Oh, and really quick, we wanted to give a quick shout out to our newest podcast sponsor, the Pros Closet, who's helping support this episode. So you probably already know about the Pros Closet as being one of the largest sources for quality certified used bikes out there, with I think over 700 bikes currently listed on their website, from mountain bikes to gravel bikes to road bikes. You name it, they probably have it on there. Now, the Pros Closet is definitely not like just buying any random used bike off the internet or something like that. All their bikes go through a very thorough process of cleaning, to drying, to being checked over for anything that may need to be replaced, and then they're finally tuned up by master mechanics before being professionally photographed and then being boxed up, just like a new bike, and then they're ready to go. And this is probably one of the best ways to save money on a used bike versus a new bike and still know that you're getting something that's in great condition. And if you have a bike that you're looking to find a new home for, the Pros Closet also buys bikes where you can get an instant store credit, you can trade it for something fancier, or you can get cash if your bike is accepted. But something that's actually back with the Pros Closet is their consignment program, where you could potentially get even more than their cash offering, where there's still a guaranteed minimum price for your used bike after 120 days, but it could actually sell for more before that time comes up. And one last thing about the Pros Closet is that it's not just about used bikes. So they have this entire retail showroom that's just a little bit down the road from me here down in the Boulder area, where they have everything from helmets to shoes to components to even stuff that we talk about in this podcast, like bike computers. Anyhow, we've got a special code down in the description below where you can get $40 off any purchase of $200 or more. So just go ahead and check out our special link, enter the code 2024FitFall40 to get that next piece of gear that you need. And it's definitely about need, not want. It's definitely need. Anyhow, thanks to the Pros Closet for sponsoring this episode. So you guys just had a price increase, from $15 to $20 a month. So where you didn't necessarily slowly increase the price over time. So after, having that particular strategy and hearing some of the feedback, do you feel like you maybe should have done more of an incremental increase? Do you see that maybe in the future, 5 years down the road?
We did our best to try to keep our prices down as long as possible. It was 7 years, since raising prices. Had we raised prices every year, I think you said this in your last podcast, we would have actually earned more money, right? But look, I sympathize with consumers, seeing a price rise like that, and we wouldn't have done it unless we thought it was worth it, for starters, and that it was time for us to raise the price where I think the value for 20 is still very, very strong. Mm-hmm. And so, it's unfortunate. I sympathize. I get it. It's no one likes to see the prices go up, but for us, having a sustainable business is more important. And so this was all about hey, we want Zwift to carry on for years to come, or we have to put in a financial position that, so that we can eventually become a profitable company. We've been funding all this for nearly 10 years. It's time for us to kind of adjust, and so we've done that as a company. We've right-sized the business, and we've also right-sized, I think, where the value of Zwift is.
Looking at the fact that Zwift Ride is multi-user, so you have ideally or hopefully multiple riders in the same family riding that, where do you guys see offering a family plan or something like that down the road?
We are exploring it right now. And so there's no timeline for that, but I think that is, we recognize that is one of the top requested features, and just trying to figure out the best way to do that so that it's scalable and it's not abused. These are all things that, just requires some thought and development.
And then likewise, in that same kind of family realm, there's been kind of news lately around you guys pulling back a bit on the kids' accounts. What's sort of the, backstory there as to...
Yeah, I think, so of course I read the Facebook and the forums about this, and I get it. Like, look, we are the biggest supporters of kids' accounts, and we've been doing this for many years. But the true cost of supporting this program is not insignificant, and probably the reason why no one else does it, right? Like, do you know any other platform that does this? Like, no one does this. So we're trying to figure out a solution where this is it's a solution that could be supported. We care a lot about privacy, children privacy, but given all the changes that we've made, we've decided that we just can't afford to keep supporting this. So we've, at least for the time being, stopped onboarding new kids, but the current kids are continuing to use the product.
And the kids' experience is different from an adult experience, correct? There's
some security around that. It's not because we're trying to charge kids. That's not the point. The point is, privacy around children is really important. If you're not able to do that and continue to invest in that, you're better off not doing it. So we're just kind of rethinking how we should do this before we invest more in it.
So setting aside the kids' accounts, how do you grow the indoor cycling market at the younger ages? So I think it's a problem that many sports have, and that, especially a sport like cycling and indoor cycling, which tends to be kind of expensive. How do you get people in the teens and the early 20s onto your platform from an affordability standpoint, or just kind of bringing them into this cult, if you will?
Well, I think with the ride, we'll be able to, go into schools if we wanted to, right? We've always thought about, hey, wouldn't it be great to have a high school league where you can have esports, right? You can compete against other schools. So the ride really unlocks lots of opportunities, not only in schools, but in potentially in gyms and hotels, etc. So, but yeah, it's a good question. How do we? And it's not just a Zwift challenge. Like, how do we get more kids on bikes is the real challenge, right? Where safety is a concern. So yeah, we're looking at how we can, I think giving accounts away to kids for free is certainly one way to do that. But I think you still are missing the hardware. The hardware will be an unlock, and should we come out with a household plan, hopefully that will help.
Do you see, I know Zwift Ride's being available in certain markets, but not entirely globally. How will you expand that to get kind of that greater reach from a global standpoint?
You mean in terms of?
Availability for the Zwift Ride?
Yeah, the ride will be available not only in the US, but Canada, UK, EU, Australia, Japan. So it's got a pretty good footprint at launch.
Okay. Do you see the frame eventually being offered through other distributors? The same way that you would buy a Wild Kicker core, you could buy a Zwift frame through XYZ distributor?
Yeah, it's not out of the gate, but why not? It's a possibility. Yeah, absolutely.
So where do you see? Sorry, are you all done?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had my scroll
Yeah,
wheel was
no,
moving,
exactly.
it's
No, I
like,
saw it. Yeah, exactly. So, where do you see Zwift Run right now, and what challenges do you see in terms of like growing that audience? I know the Kicker Run just came out with which I think definitely is going to help it. But where do you want to see Zwift Run go?
Yeah, we do have an engaged community of runners. As you know, most of it's free to use running on Zwift. I think we still haven't figured out how to really unlock that experience, and I think the Kicker Run is a real test for us to see if that is what changes the customer experience, and maybe that's the product market fit that we've been missing all along. So I'm really excited to see where that goes, because I suspect if that's successful, Kicker Run won't be WOW won't be the only one making these adjustable trainers that will be similar to the controllable trainers that we have in cycling. That could really open up the market. That's super exciting. So I think it's great to see Wahoo kind of innovating on that front.
Why haven't you charged for Zwift Run?
I think it's a combination of us not feeling like we have figured out the product market fit. And most of the runners are paying subscribers already, so they're doing both. And so if you want just true runners to come in, I think we need a bit more. And maybe the hardware is the missing link. And I'm really curious to see if that helps us to unlock. And I think if that is it, then I think we'll invest more in running.
Speaking of kind of paying and stuff, and going back briefly to the pricing side of it, one of the most common questions common responses people had was offering different tiers of Zwift. So people said that, I only use the basic stuff. I don't want to pay for all the extra stuff. What was your thinking around tiers or no tiers, obviously at this point, but...
I think these are topics that we discuss internally. I think putting tiering product by features, I think it's tough to do, to be honest. So maybe there are other dimensions that you can do, maybe multiple users or multiple devices, or there are other things that other subscription businesses have tackled, right? Whether it's Netflix or Spotify. So, but I think it's hard for us to figure out like, well, what's the basic package versus like this more premium package. So yeah, we're trying to keep things simple.
All right, so moving on to some fun questions. So what level are you on Zwift right now?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I just hit like 86 or 87. I can check.
So you're
not even 100 yet. I mean,
you're not even 100.
I think I've done maybe 100,000 kilometers.
Okay.
I have someone at Zwift who joined us just a few years ago. He has like 220,000 kilometers.
Level 100, I assume?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
His goal was to pass me, and he did that pretty fast.
So what are some of your favorite features on Zwift? Like, yeah, what gets you riding on there?
I think what you have to get right is just riding. That core experience of riding has to be good, but then everything else is sort of the bells and whistles. But just the sense that you are drafting someone, or the sense that you feel like you're going uphill or downhill. These are all, I think the core experience is that. And then everything else is, okay, you've got competition, you've got training, etc. So I always check for like, is the just riding around still fun? And to me, as long as there are other people there and I have choices about where I can go, and I have more choices on Zwift than I do at my, out of my home, which is fantastic. So I focus on that. Is the core experience still good? Can the core experience get better, right?
Do you tend to ride solo on Zwift, tend to do group events or structured workouts?
So lately I've been chasing all the routes. Okay. So I only have like the hardest routes left. Like I think I have 3 or 4 left. These are the ones that are going to take me like 5 hours.
They're tough. They're tough.
Yeah. I did the Mega Pretzel, I think it was called. It took me 4 hours to do. So I'm trying to get through the challenges. And when I am in better shape, I do enjoy racing. And racing happens to be probably the most engaged audience that we have. So to the extent we can get more people to race, I think we'll have more engaged customers, right? Because you may train to race. You may want to do a recovery ride to race. There are people who just Zwift. They don't even ride outdoors. So racing is something that we're really leaning into from a community standpoint, more so than at the elite level.
So knowing you mentioned people that don't ride outdoors, having followed you on both Strava as well as your Zwift companion app, I see the dings when you start your ride, which is a whole lot. But I also see you riding outdoors quite a bit as well. What is your balance like? Your week? What does that look like from a riding standpoint?
So I usually ride Saturdays and Sundays when I actually have time. During the week, I might have an hour. Maybe sometimes at the end of the day, I might have more. And I think I'm like a typical cycling enthusiast. Just don't have time during the week. I have time on the weekend if I'm lucky. So, I think that's probably, I've been doing that for a while. I love riding outdoors. Who doesn't like riding outdoors, right? And, but, when I only have an hour, I can't be bothered going outdoors. Like, it would take me 20 minutes just to get ready. And then, it's like, forget it. I'll just knock it out in 1 hour. And so I think a lot of Zwifters feel the same way. It's just the efficiency. And so if you only have an hour and a half, get it done on Zwift. When you have more time, you go outside and have fun with your friends.
That's what I really appreciate about the ride, I guess, is that, it just does offer that solution for someone that is so time crunched. Like, even during the summer for me, when the weather's gorgeous at home, if I only have an hour, that's what I'm doing for sure. Yeah.
You didn't ask, why do we pick white?
Why did you pick white?
I mean, we tested black, gray, and white, and white won. And from our testing, and we have a lot of cyclists at Zwift, the white is way more welcoming in the home, and this is not meant to be just for the male cyclists, right? This is meant to be for the family. And so the white wins every time.
Yes, it's having these two up here right now. This feels, obviously the entire aesthetic is a bit more menacing maybe, but
yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
but yeah, it's aggressive, exactly.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it does simply fit in a, it's kind of gives me like some IKEA vibes in terms of some of like the styling and things like that, just being a little more welcoming and stuff. But
it doesn't belong in the garage. I think this belongs inside the home, right?
No, I agree.
So that was really important because we want it to be a household product.
So do you see yourself or do you see Zwift remaining in the hardware game in this sense? Are you guys calling yourself a hardware company now because of this?
Not really. We want to innovate in areas that the rest of the industry isn't, may not be. So we'll fill those gaps. And doesn't mean we'll be making this forever. Mm-hmm. Someone else makes the ride. I think we'd be pretty excited about that as well. And that's the reason why we're not making the trainer. Why? When we have partners who can play that role pretty well. So again, we brought out the ride because no one else was offering this product at the price point that we're excited about.
Well, I think we've taken up enough of your very valuable time, but I really want to thank Eric for joining us on the podcast. Any last words for me, Ray?
No, I think also note is that I've got a separate interview with Eric that I'm not sure which will go first, the podcast or this one in terms of being published, but in that interview, we're going to dive into a little more of the business side of Zwift and dig into that. And so kind of a different discussion. And I think they both will complement each other pretty well. So be on the lookout for that. But again, thank you, Eric, for your time.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Thank you so much.
For those looking for the podcast, you can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcast, as well as YouTube Music and YouTube itself. In the case of YouTube, using that, you can go and switch back and forth between the video feeds so you can see the bikes behind us, as well as the audio feed in cases where you can't see something right now. Once again, thanks for watching.
See ya.